I think it's really interesting. I think the role of the CFO has changed dramatically over the last 5 to 10 years. The CFO of today is expected to be the business model architect. And in that, because they have the most access to data, more than anybody else in the company, they're expected to use that data and provide true decision support to the rest of the organization. And they're the ones empowered to actually make the decisions in terms of where the strategy of the company should go. It's a fun time to be a CFO, but the burden is actually pretty large. I think CFOs are going to essentially evolve into COOs, where they are operators in some context, as well as the financial guardians on the other context. And I think they are the ones who can naturally be able to take over functions because they've had purview into all the functions, at least from the quantitative perspective, but also because they have a whole vision of where the company should be going from a strategic perspective. They are the ones who can actually be the operators as well. Audits are fun, right? And there's no way around preparation for an audit in crunch time. You end a period, whether you're doing quarterlies or you're doing annuals, crunch time can't be solved. But the reality is you're always trying to solve for it. Unfortunately, you get to the end and then there's a whole bunch of tasks that are always built up at the end and you have to go through these manual processes to get there. So the prep time is one thing, which is just kind of governance of what you're doing every day. But the actual crunch time of audit itself is a burden that lasts for weeks. I think the ultimate goal for any CFO is 100% predictability. And when you think about what that means, there's a trickle down all the way down to, the way the business is run. We are all striving to get there, right? And when you get to become a public company, it's, you go tell the street what you're going to do. And if you knew exactly what that was going to be, then you have the ultimate in terms of guidance and beat and raise cadence and things like that. So that is the ultimate goal. Yeah, the challenge in forecasting cash flow is that it's easy to have the cash go out. In fact, you can control that at the end of any period. You can choose whether to make disbursements or not. And typically 1 day or 2 days doesn't really impact you. Cash flow in is a more difficult part. Understanding your receipts and where the cash is coming from and getting that truly in your bank account at a certain point in time, which there is a hard date for any accounting close, that's more difficult. Every CFO should always be concerned that there's errors lurking in your financial data. In fact, I know there's errors in financial. There's errors in every single balance sheet, income statement, cash flow I look at, not just our company, but any other company. So then it's about materiality and how significant are those errors. And it is odd that there's actually a gray area to accounting, right? So an error for one may not be an error for another. The real risk is making sure that there's no material errors, that there's nothing in there that you really don't know about that should or should not be in there, and that you have a purview over everything that's really going on in your system, but you've also set up a systems of controls and peoples and processes that actually give you the comfort that things are being recorded the way they should be. The way I approach the job of being a CFO I think is a direct reflection of what my boss as CEO as well as the board would expect. Compliance and governance is number one, right? And that is something that is a requirement that you don't get to go do the quote unquote fun stuff until that is under control. At the end of the day though, that is table stakes. Any CFO is expected to get that done. What the CEO and the board and the executive staff that is around me are truly expecting is guidance. They're looking for business model ownership and true decision support coming out of my organization so that it helps them do their jobs better and actually points them towards the North Star in terms of what we want to achieve as a company. I see there's a ton of opportunity for automation in the accounting world. And I separate out accounting and finance because they are two different disciplines, but they work very, very closely together. One, simply the tying together of what those two disciplines do, meaning that finance is forward-looking and they're close to the business, understanding what the business is doing. They're capturing data in some finance tool about what is being committed and what the strategy is. Accounting is backwards looking, right? Where you close the books and you're trying to capture what has actually already happened. The gray line is what happens in between there. And it happens at accounting close, so that where you're using an FP&A finance organization to provide insight to actually what should be recorded to make sure your books are actually capturing everything they need to. That is one area that is still a manual interaction in most times. You have two different systems, and there's data capture in those two different systems, but there's no there's no automation of what should be happening. If I look at being able to actually bridge that gap with technologies, is simple things like looking at, okay, we have made the same accrual every single month for the last 18 months, and we could actually estimate what that accrual should be without having to talk to FP&A. Even though they might have better insight, we can actually estimate it just based on intelligence. If we can come in and supplement people's roles with a technology that removes the rudimentary tasks and allows them to focus on how do we become more efficient as an organization, that's going to be an area that I would buy that technology any day.